Sean, I'm just amazed at how few French veterans there are.
There really are.
I
See everybody popping on now. Everybody's video is a little bit delayed there. We're still letting everybody in. We'll do a little song and dance here. Great to see you all tonight. Thank you all for being here. Welcome. This is Veterans Breakfast Club Happy Hour for Monday, June 26th. I am Sean Hall. I'm the Director of Programming. For those of you new to us, we are a nonprofit. We are based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and our mission is creating communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. I usually am flanked by the Executive Director, Todd D. Pastino. He is on vacation this week, so I will be flying somewhat solo here, running the technical back end and introducing the organization and the program. But with me tonight is actually Glenn Flickinger, the host of Greatest Generation Live. Glenn, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Hello, Sean. Hello, the audience. Glad to have what looks like a nice audience tonight for, I think, a fascinating evening talking to one of our World War II vets who's still with us and doing very well.
Yes, definitely. We will be getting to Phil very shortly. What we'd like to do is go ahead and thank sponsors and get some information out there about the Veterans Breakfast Club over the next couple of weeks here. For the first couple of minutes, I'll hand it off to Glenn and we'll dive straight into the stories because we know that that's what's bringing everybody in tonight. So tobacco-free, Adagio Health, you can see that there on your screen. They have been a longtime sponsor of the VBC. They are dedicated to reducing and preventing tobacco use and getting the word out about the hazards of smoking and secondhand smoke. They want people to quit. So they have classes, nicotine replacement therapy, and a popular quit line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW. They also educate people, children especially, about tobacco use from cigarettes, cigars, pipes, chews, snuff, and other nicotine products like vaping. And finally, they advocate for public and private policies that ensure healthy places to live, work, and play. You can find out everything that Tobacco Free has on all the programs that they have to offer by visiting their website, tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org. Thank you so much for sponsoring us, Tobacco Free. Coming up next, we have, let's see here, the Scuttlebutt. So I'm introducing this program tonight. Usually Todd is the host of the Happy Hour Monday nights. Glenn does our Greatest Generation. I host our pre-recorded podcast, The Scuttlebutt. And as you can see, there's a couple different episodes that have come out in the last month. The Scuttlebutt we had an honest conversation about the Civ Mill divide with, oh man, his name just popped out of my, Stu Blackwell. Thank you. Stu Blackwell, there in the top left. Awesome conversation I had with him. I'm a civilian. I'm not a veteran, passionate about veteran stories. Stu is a Marine Corps veteran. We had a great conversation on the Scuttlebutt podcast about Civ Mill divide, asked each other some very honest questions that a civilian might ask a veteran, and him, a veteran, asking a civilian. Next up on the top right, you see yins are good. Those who you don't know the word yins, Glenn, can you tell me what the word yins is?
Means y'all.
That's right. Yins. There's a whole like dictionary of Pittsburghese out there. You can say things like spigot or sweep the floor or the Jaggerbush or the crick. You know, these are all words that we've used in Pittsburgh. But yins are good. Tressa Glover, she's the host of that podcast. She is not a veteran, but she is out there trying to find organizations that are doing good in our community. I got the chance to have her onto my podcast to talk about her grandfather who was in World War II. And we talked a bit about her podcast as well. And also, at the bottom of the screen, you will see Tracer Patient, the book by Tara Fields. Tara spent 12 years in the Army. She is a clinical social worker. She left the Army and decided to write a book. Her mission right now is to help the military understand that mental health needs to be taken seriously from the very first day. I found it interesting because many of the veterans I talked to are like, hey, the military does a great job about getting you into the military. They don't do such a great job about transitioning you out of the military. She believes the opposite. She felt that the military doesn't do a very great job of getting you into the military because They need to do more to understand where you're coming from in your life and then help prep you for the challenges ahead of you. I had a great conversation with her. That was just released today, that episode.
No.
In our magazine, VBC magazine, this was the last magazine with Harry Van Riper. And then we have our next magazine, which will be coming out very soon. It'll be hitting your mailboxes. Bob Harbulo is our cover boy for this. He has told his story a couple times here with VBC, and he will be back with us in a couple Mondays to, again, talk about his service in the Korean War. If you don't get this magazine, please just send us an email with your address, and you can do that at Sean, SHAUN, at veteransbreakfastclub.org, or Todd, TODD, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. You will get this free quarterly magazine, and anybody here, I'm sure, would tell you that they love the magazine. It's done very well, and it's absolutely free. So just send us your address. We send it to you. And happy to do that. It has all of our information about our programs. It has veteran stories. Great magazine. So a little bit more. That's Bob Hubrilla. He'll be joining us on July 24th. A couple pictures from his service in the Korean War. And this, let's see here. Do I have Brad? I do have Brad. Brad, I'll ask you to unmute. Brad, who is this?
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hey, Brad.
Can you tell us who this is, and is it his birthday or a celebration?
Well, I think probably quite a few know in the audience, but if they don't, that is Chesty Puller, Lieutenant General, Marine Corps, had the distinction of being a recipient of 5 Navy Crosses, amongst other decorations. A real legend in the Marine Corps. Chesty was known for many things, but his love of his Marines and prowess in battle and bravery are his hallmarks. And remains a legend in the Marine Corps to this day.
And Don Nemchek, you're the one that sent me an email and said, hey, we should honor him tonight, Chesty. Don, you have your hand raised?
Yes, I do, Sean. And thank you for mentioning today this noteworthy day in Marine Corps and Naval history. I'm proud to speak about Chesty Puller. I know Brad certainly has his comments as well, but I just read so much about Chesty Puller and how he was the Marine's Marine. I know that's cliche, but that's really fact. You know, having 5 Navy Crosses, and it's my understanding, and correct me, Brad, that they did not want one of his Navy Crosses to be transferred to a Medal of Honor because they wanted General Puller to be the only Marine ever to have 5 Navy Crosses. And it's so interesting that, you know, with all the decorations and the heroism and the leadership that General Puller has exhibited during his career, he's not buried at Arlington Cemetery. He opted to be buried in his hometown. But I know, Brad, I was not at Paris Island, but I had many men, friends of mine, tell me the same thing. Before they hit that rack, it's good night, Chesty Puller, wherever you are.
There you go. It's true. Do or die. You got it.
This is Glenn. Is my brother John Barber happen to be on the program tonight?
Let me take a look for you. I'm going through the list. I see a John Meekins, but I don't know if a John Apple as well, but not John Barber.
Yeah. So John is, many of you know, my brother, a Vietnam era Marine, and he has a great Chesty Puller story. So John was in Nam for his first tour in 68, 67, 68. No, I'm sorry, back that up. 65, 66. Then he came back to the States, and he was serving at the Pentagon as a guard there, you know, at the Pentagon, as I understood it. And he was guarding one of the main entrances to the Marine Corps complex in the Pentagon, and in walks Chesty Puller. And John noticed him, of course, right away, having been a Marine. And Chesty Puller walks right up to him, sees his service badges, sees that he'd been in Nam, sees he'd been with the 1st Marine Division, and talked to John for, I think, 10 or 15 minutes. And then went on. But John tells that story obviously much better than I can. And I know it's been one of the highlights of his Marine Corps service, is that he got to talk to Chesty. And Chesty, you know, wasn't just, hi, how you doing? It was a nice little chat.
You know, that's interesting, Glenn, because it's my understanding that when Chesty Puller passed and then his wife Virginia passed away, the Marine Corps bought his house. They formed a nonprofit organization and bought his house so no one else can live in Chesty Puller's house. That house is for Marines to visit if they need a place to go.
Wow. Wow.
That's how that revered Chesty Puller is to this day. To this day.
There's
Thank
a
you, gentlemen.
couple great biographies I've read of his, and highly recommend. There's a relatively new one out, maybe in the last 4 or 5 years.
You could even follow up with the story about his son, Chesty Puller III. The book is entitled "Fortunate Son," and it's a very sad story. Of course, it had a very sad ending as well. But they say, Chesty Puller, when he's seen his son who was severely wounded in Vietnam, when he's seen his son in the hospital, he broke down and cried.
Well, Glenn,
Okay.
I'd love to hand off the program to you. Anybody, if you would like to ask a question of our guest tonight, you put it into the chat. You can raise your hand this way, wave your hand. I'll be trying to monitor the windows. You can also raise your hand like Dawn did by clicking down below on the reactions and just clicking raise hand. I'm happy to call on you. And Glenn, take us away.
Okay, thanks. Very, very happy to be here tonight. For those of you maybe who don't know me, Glenn Flickinger, I'm a member of the board of the Veterans Breakfast Club. And for the past 3 or so years now, I've been the host of this Zoomcast, if you will, Greatest Generation Live, all things World War II. And it's been my great honor to do this for a few years now. I've been able to interview a couple dozen World War II veterans and a lot of World War II authors. And tonight we have another World War II veteran and a very interesting man that is 101 and will be 102 years old on August the 16th. And that is one Phil Horowitz. Phil, please say hello.
Hi.
And Phil, it's a pleasure to have you on. Phil and I had the chance to talk a few days ago in preparation for this, and I've listened to a couple of other interviews Phil has done. He's a very young 101. And we're also happy, we don't see him in the picture, but Phil's grandson, Michael, is in the background there and helps Phil through connecting and so forth. So, Michael, thank you for supporting your grandfather.
Not a problem. Happy to be here with everybody.
Okay. So, Phil, let's get started. Born, did I get that date right? August 16th of 1921?
That is correct. That was my birthday. I grew up on a farm in Nugent, central New Jersey at the shore. And when the draft came out, I think it was 1941, I received a farm deferment automatically. They felt that farmers were important.
Yeah.
And I told my father, Pop, I have to change this immediately. He said, I know, son, and I'm very proud of you. And in small towns, as we live, the draft board and other boards were run by the merchants. And I ran into my barber. He was my draft head. And I told him I would like to have my draft status changed. He said, Phil, we're proud of you. We will change it. And boy, did he change it fast. The next week, I was a Fort Dix.
So, were you drafted before or after Pearl Harbor?
After.
After. So, where were you when Pearl Harbor happened? What do you remember about the day of the attack on Pearl Harbor?
Oh, I remember I was at a dance with young people, and they announced that Pearl Harbor had been bombed. No one said a word. Everyone ran to their car and ran right home.
Yeah.
And that's the way it started. I was inducted in Fort Dix, and we took exams as we went into service to see which is the best place they could place you. And I was placed. There was a new military police battalion forming. I was in a company which is designated special duty and prisoners of war primarily. And that's what we trained for.
And that was
as a
what,
matter of-
mid 1942, I think you told me. It was when you
This
were
was
drafted and trained.
1942. It was mid 1942. We were told that they're going to have a special duty for us. If you remember Rommel in North Africa,
Sure do.
Rommel was running through North Africa looking for oil for the German army. Eisenhower said there's only one man that can stop him. That's George Patton. And Patton went in with his 100th Tank Battalion, and he certainly did. He chased Rommel right into Egypt. The
But-
only problem was,
Before you went to North Africa, though, let's back up a little bit.
okay,
What did you see? Your grandson told me, and I heard your story about Pier 86 in New York City. What happened there?
okay. Well, I was in Fort Dix, and we were designated special duty. Pier 86, if you know New York, is right on the Hudson, and the largest French cruise ship, I think it was the Normandie.
Yeah.
Was put on fire by arsonists, which was terrible. If you could see the ship laying on its belly like a beached whale, huge. And on the other side of Pier 86 was the Queen Mary. Now, what they did, they gave us duty to take charge of the Queen Mary while it was in port. And that's what we did. We went through it every day, our company, and we stood guard on it. And from there, we went into various other details.
Let me ask you a question.
Would you like to ask anything?
Well, let me show you a picture here and see if this reminds you of anybody. Give me a second here.
Well, my eyes are a little
He's gonna
bad.
make it big.
Is,
There we go.
oh, that
This young
picture,
man.
I was in service just a short while, and I think I had my first time off, and I went home. I was very proud to be in uniform.
So I see this whistle here. Is that something that all MP wore? This is your dress uniform. Is that specific to being a part of the military police?
Yeah, well, military police have probably all GIs that were in the regular army. And I went home. I think I was very proud. I just became a PFC.
Yeah, I see that. But this whistle, that had to be just for MPs, right?
What was the whistle for?
Oh, the whistle. When we were on guard duty, we did primarily at that point, we were fairly new. We were doing guard duty at military intersections, military installations. Now, they taught us if you're alone and there was a brother MP within distance, they gave us how many whistles would attract someone and bring them to your attention.
Okay. So
Glenn, someone asked in the chat, what unit patch is that?
What unit were you?
What year was what?
What unit?
Oh, my company was Company B. Now, we were given instructions primarily in the handling of prisoners of war and how to interrogate prisoners of war. As a matter of fact, the first German prisoners we saw was about 6 months later in 1942, when Patton went into North Africa. He captured many prisoners of war, but they did not have any prisoner compound. They didn't know what to do with them. They decided to put them on a boat and send them to Nova Scotia.
Can you go down 2 pictures to where it looks like Phil is wearing a winter jacket? Yep, that's
Okay, that picture is when we went up to Nova Scotia to pick up the prisoners of war that Patton put on a ship. They came into Nova Scotia. We went there, we took them off the ship. We had another unit help. They had to be shackled. They were shackled 2 by 2 and put on a train. We found out we were going to take them to El Paso, Texas, which was amazing. I didn't know why we're shipping them to an American city. But we were on a plane, on the train with them 6 days. It was a horrendous trip. But we finally got them to El Paso. They had a stockade made for them. And we unloaded them. And we went back to Fort Dix.
While you were with these prisoners, Phil, did they give you any problems? What was their attitude like?
Well, let me tell you, the troops that Rommel had were the elite of the German army. He was given tall, good-looking, blonde, blue-eyed troops, and they looked down on everyone as inferior. In fact, we had a few battles on the train. I had a friend from where the hell was we? New York State. And he was really a tough guy. And we spoke Yiddish, and German is very similar, many of it. And they said some deteriorating remarks, and Sam didn't like it, and he cracked the German over the back of the head with his club. We carried no weapons on the train.
Really?
The MPs at either end of the train had weapons. We finally got them off. The next thing they did with us, they shipped us to Messina, New York. You know where Messina is?
Sorry, I don't, Phil. Where is Messina?
It's on the French border. Messina, New York had the largest, I'm trying to think of what they did there. They were making weapons, and they were sabotaged. The lines coming in from Canada to Messina factory were ripped down. It's amazing. There was so much sabotage going on. Well, I imagine there was a big German contingency in the United States, and their allegiance was still with Germany. And we patrolled the lines from Canada to Messina. When we got back, it was the beginning of August. We got back to Fort Dix. We were told to pack up. We are going out for real. We went to Newport News, Virginia, which was the embarkation place for troop ships. And the weapons we carried were Enfield rifles, archaic rifles. We didn't get M1s until we landed in Italy. Well, we were on a boat 21 days, and it was a pretty large convoy. And of course, they were dropping anti-submarine bombs continuously, and we did not get much sleep. Now, the most amusing part of us landing in Oran, Algeria, the captain of the ship said, "We will be on board for 3 hours. You GIs must be hot and sweaty. If you like, we're going to make arrangements. We'll drop the back raft and you can jump into the Mediterranean to cool off." The funniest thing you will ever see is 100 GIs, tall ones, short ones, fat ones, skinny ones, disrobing down to their nothing and jumping into the Mediterranean.
But it was cool.
That was really a funny sight.
I just
And then
put
we
the snap
came
up here, Phil, to remind the audience. So in November, 8th of November, 1942 was the invasion of North Africa, right? The Western Task Force under Patton here in Morocco, and then the two other task force, the British and American, further here. And this is Oran, right in the middle. So by the time you landed in August of 1943, right, the front is already here. In fact, I'm trying to remember the date that we actually took Tunis. It might have been July of 1943. Somebody in the audience, I'm sure, is going to remind me of that. So you're coming in and you're following the troops, providing PW services, and what other kind of experiences did you have in North Africa, Phil?
Well, if I can give you a slight update of the most exciting thing that happened to us.
Yes, please do.
We were told we were going to meet an American bomber. I think, what was the big bomber? The B-27?
Either B-24 or B-17.
You would know. And when the plane lands in Lucena Airport in Iran, we are going to single file around it with our weapons, one GI facing in, one facing out. The plane comes in and a couple of large vehicles come and they're waiting, and a few officers get off the plane. The next people to get off the plane, 4 GIs were carrying a wheelchair with someone in it backwards with a black coat up to their neck. I happened to be stationed right by the flight of stairs that went into the airline. Who do you think it was that came off the plane first?
I'm gonna guess his initials were FDR.
Well, the first one off the plane was President Roosevelt. This was a very exciting moment. As he came off, I gave him a salute and he waved to me, "Hello, soldier." And he went into a staff car. The next one off the plane, you could not miss, with his small cigar, Winston Churchill. As he came off, we saluted. And the third one off the plane was General Dwight Eisenhower. Now here you have the 3 most important people in the world getting off a plane, correct?
That's what you saw. You were there.
the most important people in the world, and they all got into staff cars and drove away. We were put at ease and said we would wait around for them to come back. They came back in about 45 minutes. And the way they came off the plane, they went on, and the plane drove away, flew away. We got onto a 2.5-ton GMC, and the sergeant said, "We're going to raise the curtains on the truck. There's something you must see." The Lasenia Airport in Iran was very close to the Mediterranean. As we were on the way back, he stopped the truck and he said, "You GIs, look out to see what you're going to see." We saw a huge German battleship with Nazi flags all over it. We could not understand what this was, but this was an unusual sight. We got back to camp. Our captain, Captain McHendricks, said, "Of course, you guys are very, very excited and would like to know what was going on." He said, "The German High Command, with or without the knowledge of Hitler, wanted to meet with the American and British High Command. They offered them a peace treaty without the Russians." Well, of course, it was not accepted, and everybody went their way. My son-in-law is very good on the computer. He found a small article relating to this story.
Oh, really? I'd love to see that myself.
What's that?
He wants us to send him the article.
Okay.
What happened after that?
Yeah,
We
I
went-
looked up some things myself, Phil. So that was in the fall of 1943. And
Yeah.
my best guess is,
For Christmas.
so my best guess is that was FDR, Churchill, and Eisenhower coming back from the Tehran conference that occurred in November of 19.
That's where they were on the way from,
Yeah.
to
And,
meet with the German High Command.
Well, what's interesting, Phil, besides that part of the story, meeting with the German High Command, that's shortly thereafter, or maybe even at that meeting with FDR and Eisenhower, is when FDR informed Eisenhower that he was going to be put in charge of Operation Overlord, that he was going to be taken from the Mediterranean and put in charge of the invasion of Normandy, of Europe. So
Yes,
it's a very, very important meeting in lots of different ways, lots of different levels, Phil.
Yes, he was a brilliant general, Eisenhower, well respected. Well, we came up to Christmas Day, 1943. We were told we were leaving Africa. We got on a British ship, and we went across the Mediterranean to Naples. Now we understand we're in the true war zone.
Right. You see here this map of the first, of course, was the invasion of Sicily in July of 43, and then the invasion of Italy at Salerno in September of 43. So you were here in Tunis and North Africa and went to Naples, just north of Salerno in early 1940, late 43, early 44. Yeah. And what
The
did you do in
Germans
Italy?
were not that interested in Italy, and they were going north very rapidly. And the Italian soldiers that we came in touch with, they they did not really want to fight the Americans. And we went north very, very fast. We wound up just south of Rome, June 5th. And we had loads of Italian prisoners. We were unloading freight cars with all sorts of ammunition and artillery shells. We knew something big was going to happen. That was June 5th. Well, June 6th was the invasion of Normandy.
So you were part of which army at that point? You were part of Mark Clark's fifth
At
army.
that point, we were in Clark's Fifth Army. General Clark was a very fine man, but I hate to say that the generals such as Patton and Montgomery were not overly fond of him because he dealt with the American High Command, the Senate, and the Congress. He was a wonderful man. Easter 1943, General Clark decided to make Passover for the Jewish troops. We were in Caserta, which was where the King's Palace was. It's the largest palace in Europe. And it was a wonderful day. There were 2,100 American troops celebrating. We had all sorts of chaplains, Jewish, Catholics, didn't matter. And we had our services in Caserta. And then we started going north. We went north very fast. And whenever we ran into a troop of German soldiers, they did not fight us. They were happy to be taken prisoners by the Americans rather than the Russians. The Russians took no prisoners. You know what they did.
Phil, where were you on June the 6th, D-Day? You were in Italy. Do you remember the announcement of June the 6th?
On D-Day, June 6th, we were in Rome.
Yeah.
We landed in Villa Borghese, which is the park in the center of Rome. It is a very beautiful park. And we were bivouacked there in our pup tents. And then we started going north. We went as far north as a town on the shore called Civitavecchia. If you've been to Italy, you know it. It's a beautiful seashore town. They said, we are leaving and we're going south. We were on trucks for 2 days. We went south until the water of southern Italy, and we were put on LCIs, landing craft infantry. We were told we are going to make a landing in southern France. We landed in southern France, Saint-Tropez, on my birthday, August 16th, 1944.
All right, let them show the map.
Right. This is the famous Operation Dragoon, the much delayed but very successful. Oops, I got the wrong map. There we are. Invasion of southern France. Before we go further, Phil, let me stop and ask Sean. Sean, has anybody raised their hands, or is there anything in the chat room that somebody would like to ask a question of Phil?
Jeff Witherell asked this, a little while ago if there was any U-boat action in the Mediterranean, I'm assuming.
Did you see any U-boats in the Mediterranean?
Well, we were in a very large convoy, and most of the ships were dropping ash cans or the anti-submarine depth charges.
Depth charges, right, depth charges.
This went on for 20 days. We were happy to land in Africa. We didn't care if the German army was waiting for us. We had enough of the ocean. And that was the beginning of our ordeal.
Right, right.
In Africa, what was very interesting, Sean, Oran was where the French, British, and Americans had their North African headquarters.
Right.
I met General de Gaulle a couple of times. He was a very imposing figure. And at the end of our duty each day, we would meet at the headquarters, and the three flags, the French, the American, and the British, would come down and they would sing the three national anthems. It was a very emotional sight.
You know, it's part of the Battle of North Africa, at least at the very beginning in November of 1942, that most of us forget. Our first fight in the European theater was against the French, not against the Germans.
Yes, it was the French forces that were, I forget what they called them, that were pro-German.
Yes. Yeah. And it took a few days to, get them to change their minds, but they did. And then
Yes, they did.
de Gaulle and some of the other French free force leaders took over.
And if I may point out, when we landed in Saint-Tropez, the object of our landing was to go northwest in France. We went through hundreds of little towns to meet up with Patton's Third Army west of Paris. Okay, would you like to ask something?
Well, Sean, any other questions in the chat room or from the audience before we go further?
Phil was with General Patch, is that correct?
Yes, we met up with the Third Army.
No, he said, General Patch, P-A-T-C-H.
No, we were with Patton at that point.
No, so Patch was the German or was the American general in charge of the 7th Army.
Yes,
So
when we
Phil,
landed in France, we were in the 7th Army. We went from the 5th to the 7th.
right.
And as we traveled northwest,
Right.
once we hit General Patton's territory, we became the Third Army.
Well, you became part of the 3rd Army.
Yes,
You have the distinction, I'm sure not too many soldiers had in the war, Phil, of being part of the 5th Army under Mark Clark, the 7th Army under the much underappreciated General Patch, and then the 3rd Army under the very highly appreciated Patton.
Yes.
3 separate armies you were in. You must have been very much in demand, Phil.
Sean, when we hit Patton's army, we were following the 34th Division and the 45th. When I speak of these two divisions, I become very emotional. My heart breaks because they saw all the toughest duty there was. And as we followed them, my company, and as they took a little town, we moved in to set up military government in the small communities until the Americans and the British would move in and take over. I remember we were now very close to Patton. I missed a very big talk that he gave to his troop. We were not in the area. And he was looking forward to going into, what's the town, the capital?
Paris.
Paris.
Paris. I told him, General, you'll have to bear with us. We promised the goal, which was very honorable and the way it should be, to be the first ones into Paris with his troop to liberate.
Right.
I'm sorry, I get a little emotional.
Oh, take your time. Take your time. Maybe, I don't know, Sean, is there anything we can chat about in the chat room while we're giving Phil a little break? Maybe get a drink of water, Phil?
Yes, thank you.
It was asked if Mr. Horowitz has the French Legion, I'm going to butcher that, to honor.
Here, where's your medal?
What was that?
Do you have the French Legion to honor?
Oh, you know, in 19, yeah, well, I'm trying to think of the year. I think it's 1917. The French government decided they would like to give an award to any American troops that landed in France in 1944. And there were 8 of us in South Florida that were called in, and the French embassy, I don't know if you can see it, gave us a beautiful medal. Do you see it?
Yeah, and I have a picture there.
We have the picture of you receiving it.
Perfect.
Now,
Close up of the medal.
the talk that the French ambassador gave us, Napoleon was the first one to receive the French Legion of Honor. He said, now you GIs belong to a club that's very exclusive, where Napoleon was the first recipient. And that was very nice.
You and Napoleon, that's it.
That was quite nice. And
Would you like me to read off of the discharge, or we could do that at the end? I have a list of the other awards that he received, because it's listed, his decorations, on the discharge document.
my eyes are pretty bad, so Michael will take care of the reading.
Should I wait till the end?
Yeah, let's wait till the end, just a few more minutes, and then we'll close with that, Michael.
Sounds good.
All
Phil,
right, I
you
give
told
you
me-
what happened. After we followed Patton into Paris, Paris was really a heartwarming sight. And we were going east with him. This is where he wound up at the Bulge,
Right.
where they were having some problems. And they made an announcement, all non-combatant troops should stand outside of the Bulge, ready if they were needed. We were 4 miles outside of the Bulge in 2 foot of snow. Thank God the weather broke and the American Air Force was able to go in and do what it had to. And Patton and his beautiful tank corps went in, and we followed Patton across, what do you call the bridges that,
Over the Rhine.
Rhine. Yes, over the Rhine. We landed in Mulheim, which was in Bavaria on the Rhine. And we went further into Germany. And the sad part was Roosevelt passed away while we were in Germany.
April 12th. Yes.
And then a little further down the line, the Germans decided to surrender. We went into Germany up until about November 1st. We traveled all through Germany following Patton's armies.
Tell us a little bit about what Germany was like in April, May of 1945, just at the end of the war.
Yes.
How devastated was it? Were there lots of displaced people? What was it like?
The German people were not very passionate about the way we felt. They were very proud. They welcomed us. We went into many towns where they were happy to see us. They certainly were happy the war was over. And we interrogated many, many German troops. Now, we had a great deal of American soldiers that were of German background, and they would interrogate the German troops through our questioning.
Right.
And it was a very uplifting time for the Americans because we had more than enough points to bring us home.
Right.
And they decided, I believe it was about November 1st, they put us on trucks again, and we were doing the whole scene back through France to Le Havre, waiting for a ride home.
So Phil, before you tell the story of going home, answer this for me. May 8th, 1945, VE Day, right? Victory in Europe. You're in Germany. What was that day like? Do you remember the announcement that the war was over? Do you remember your reaction and the reaction of the troops you were with at that time?
Well, at that point, we were traveling very fast through Germany. We were going through little towns, trying to set up military government as best we could. And as we set up military government, the American would move in and establish a little firmer government than we were able to give them. It was a very uplifting time for us, Sean.
Where were you on May 8th? On VE Day?
When?
May 8th. Where were you on May 8th? Victory in Europe Day.
May 8th. I'm trying to think. May, June, July.
Well, let me ask it this way, Phil. Did you celebrate on May the 8th? Did everybody celebrate? Was everybody have an extra beer? Did they fire off their guns?
Yes.
What did
I
they do?
recall, as we went into the small town, the German population were gracious enough to know this was a great day. The killing was stopping, and the Americans were certainly a nice people for them to come in contact with. They did not want to come in contact with any Russians. And as we went through, Patton was a little bit in front of us, and he went through and he was meeting many of the Russian troops that were going through. It was a very cerebral, they were celebrating, the Russians were celebrating more so than the Americans. Patton did not particularly like the Russian command.
Yeah.
He,
And Phil,
he made many remarks that the American Congress did not like. And they said, George, we're in a very important part of history right now. You will have to simmer down a little.
Let him ask.
he liked to talk. Phil, it's April, May 1945. Did you experience any of the liberation of the concentration camps? Did you come in contact with any of the Jewish concentration camp people who were liberated?
When we landed in Germany, the American troops, primarily the infantry, they could not wait to get to a concentration camp for liberation. It was probably the happiest day for them, but it was not that happy for the concentration camp people because they have gone through such horrendous times.
Right.
But they cheered the American troops as best they could. The American troops were gracious. They kept giving them food and drinks. And it was probably the most honorable time in history at that point, liberating the camps. Now we were going northeast in Germany. We landed in many towns. I remember one town, we were not being very nice. It was a college town. And we went into the university, and it was a medical university, and we saw cadavers hanging all over the place. And the American soldier was so happy the war was over. He kept shooting up all the cadavers. But we simmered down.
Yeah. Let's pause for a moment. Sean, we normally take an 8 o'clock station break. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, that would be great. I want to thank you all again for joining us for the conversation tonight. Again, my name is Sean Hall. I'm the Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. And if you are joining us for the first time, we are a nonprofit in Western PA and Pittsburgh. Our mission is creating communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. And we do that through several different means. Our Monday night programs here on Zoom. We are on every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time with veteran stories, military history, military topics. We also do that through a podcast, The Scuttlebutt. We have a weekly e-blast. If we don't have your email, you can send that to us. You get a free weekly e-blast. It has a bunch of veteran stories and veteran topics a part of it. We have a free magazine that you can send us your mailing address, and that comes out quarterly. It's a free magazine. And we have Glenn, who joins us for our Greatest Generation Live, which is our complement to our Monday night VBC happy hour, as you see tonight with our Greatest Generation discussion. We love having you all a part of this, and we would also ask that you take about 3 minutes to fill out a small survey that we have. I'll put it here in the chat. It doesn't take too terribly long, and we use this to let us know, how we're doing. If you enjoy the program, if you didn't enjoy the program, what you thought about it. It's a great way for us to get some feedback about all the programming that we do offer. And then you can also go to our website, www.veteransbreakfastclub.org.
It's wonderful what you boys are doing, and that you bring back memories of what happened. If you have a moment, I would like Michael sort of to read the last chapter of my discharge.
That would be wonderful, Phil. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so the Philip Horowitz was honorably discharged on, let me see the date here, November 20th, 1945. And his decorations were served overseas in Naples, Foggia campaign, Rome Arno campaign, and Southern France campaign, and in Germany. Awarded 5 Bronze Service Stars for participation in battle, Bronze Service Arrowhead, received Good Conduct Medal, also received North American Theater Operations Ribbon and European, African, Middle Eastern Ribbon. So that was the discharge papers.
And when were you discharged, Phil? What date?
November 20th, 45.
November 25th, I
No,
believe.
20th.
November 20th. That was
1945.
1945.
Tell them about.
I was overseas. Now, as we approached New York, have you ever been to Coney Island, Sean?
I have been to Coney Island,
I
yes.
want to tell you, as the ship approaches New York, the first scene you see is the parachute drop in the steeplechase. If I tell you what this does to boys, I was gone 3 years. I hadn't seen my mother and father. We landed in New Brunswick, New Jersey for discharge. Now, if I can give you a moment, I think it's very emotional.
Please.
When we landed in camp, we were going to be discharged the following day. But after not seeing your family for 3 years, you couldn't wait till the next day. There were holes in the fence created by all the GIs that came in before me. And I went out to the road, and the first car that passed me stopped. "Can I help you, soldier?" I said, "Yes, I'm going home to Tom's River." It was about an hour away. And if you could drop me off any place that's convenient for you. The lady in the car said, "Soldier, we are going to put you on your driveway." It was very emotional as I got home. And my sister yells out to my mother, "Mama, Philip is home." They came rushing out. All the neighbors in the neighborhood came rushing out. And my father was sleeping. They woke him up, and as he came, my father is a burly Russian. He came from Russia at age 16. He loved America. When he saw me, we walked to each other. He grabbed me and picked me up. It is the first time in my life I saw my father cry. It was very emotional. And what he said to the crowd, I think, is a very emotional thing. He said, "I sent away Phil, a skinny chicken farmer, and they sent me back a man." I think that was the end of my service.
It's a beautiful story, Phil. Beautiful. Now, I happen to know where your father's from because I heard you talk about your father, and it's really fascinating. Where's he actually from? Where was he born? Where did he live?
My father was born where they're doing the fighting today. Belarus.
He was born in Belarus.
That's where he came from. And he loved America. The first thing he did was went to night school. And he was really he went for his citizenship as fast as he could.
Well,
and that was the story of my Army career.
And a beautiful one and a great one. Thank you very much for sharing that. let me ask you a couple questions. And Sean, if there's anybody else before me that would like to ask, maybe let's pause there and let them ask before me.
Go ahead.
So
You can go ahead, Glenn. Yeah.
Okay. So Phil, for that 3 years of your service, what was the most difficult moment, the most difficult time that you had during the war?
Can I tell you, a very difficult time was when I landed in Italy, and the first time I saw Graves registration picking up body bags on the side of the road as though they were potatoes. I think that they hit the troops. That was our first vision of actual combat with Graves registration.
Phil, being Jewish, were you ever afraid? Were you ever worried about being captured by the Germans? Did it add an extra dimension of concern to you?
While we were in training in Fort Dix, there was a large portion of our training given to circumstances that would happen. And this came up many times. And the attitude, I was 22 years old. I thought that I was the toughest guy in the world. And we were told what to do, what to say. And fortunately, my company were always on the other end of the German troops. We were handling the prisoners of war.
Right. Now, so Phil, in that same vein of question, in the 3 years you're in the service, other than coming home and hugging your father, what was the happiest? What was the most pleasant memory you have of the 3 years of service?
Well, you know, when I was following, when we landed in Italy with Clark, Italy was, we were involved many times in artillery barrages, and our duty was handling prisoners of war to unload ammunition and artillery. From Italy, we landed in France. And a funny part, the first day I was told to patrol a certain part of the beach. And as I'm patrolling, there's a motorcycle kicking up sand, and he was chasing the troops around. And as he approached me, I took out my .45 and fired in the air, and he fell down off his motorcycle. He looks at me, he wipes he said, Horowitz, you know, you could have killed me. It was someone I knew from back home very well. I said, Bronx, you're very lucky I didn't kill you. That was a very humorous, you know, you took humor as a nature to soothe you. You learned how to cope with stress. There were many GIs. I remember when we were in various places, they took it very, very strong. I heard crying, and I didn't blame them. I felt like crying many times myself.
Sure.
It was sad. You miss your mother. You're in different circumstances. And that's the way, as we went on, you became a little more hardened. and you learn how to handle situations.
Glenn, Scott asks, did Phil's dog tags indicate that he was Jewish?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't answer that. You know, my company, my battalion was the 2nd Corps, which was New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. So many of the, what do you call the soldiers being conscripted were all kind. We were Italian, Polish, Jewish, you name it. And as we went along, we were interested in one thing, taking each other's back where it's necessary.
But what was your religion on the dog tag?
My dog tags, you know, said Hebrew. And they told us what to do should ever your dog tags fell into German hands. And that was a very frightening part of it. But thank God we were always on the other end of the watch.
Yeah. Anything else, Sean? I have one last photo I want to show Phil, if there's nothing else.
Okay.
Go ahead, Glenn.
The reunion.
Oops.
You know,
He's
that
gonna make it big.
that picture there are my sergeants. My first sergeant, top kick, was regular Army. He was a Jewish boy. He was a chain-smoking camel. Everyone in the company knew whether they smoked or not, they better have a pack of Camels on them. All day long, he was chiseling cigarettes. He was a fantastic soldier.
How many years after the war was that picture?
Now, these are my non-commissioned officers.
Are you in this picture, Phil? Which one are you?
Yeah, Michael, which one am I? I can't see very well. Is that Mikey? Okay,
The second from the right with the black tie.
right here. That's it.
Yep, right there.
I'm between.
I think he still has that suit.
I was going to say, I love the 1940 era
Sergeant.
suits.
He was a fantastic. You know, you become very close. After 4 years with brothers, you become extremely close. You know each other's background. You know what to do to make them a little easier to get along with. And that's this one, the first soldier there is, he's fantastic. He's from Jersey City, Lombardy. Oh, we were very close.
Scott asks, Glenn, Scott asked, Phil, were you able to learn the fate of your father's relatives in and around Belarus?
You know, I ran into many relatives of mine along the way. If you went into a Red Cross pub, the first thing you went for was the book that everybody was signing. And there's where you found relatives, their outfits. I had a cousin of mine. He was very close. He was a captain in the, you know, I can't think.
It's okay. Take a break, Phil.
All right. And we went on.
Take a break.
You know, my thoughts get a little much and my mind gets a little bit.
It's okay, Phil. Take your time, take a breath or two. There's no rush.
You know, the memories I have were following my company, were following the 36th Division, the 45th, and the 88th. They were Third Army. We were one day behind them as they entered a town.
That's good. It's good information.
These
That's good.
These
Talk.
brothers should never, ever be forgotten. They were the soul of the Army.
Well, they were the point of the spear, right? They were the guys that walked into that German occupied town first, and they suffered great casualties. But that doesn't change the important role you and your fellow soldiers played in the entire war. Phil, it's been an honor to have you on and hear your story. And I think maybe, Sean, unless there's some other questions, we ought to think about wrapping it up for the evening.
Not a problem. Yes, in the chat, we're good there. Though over on let's say on the YouTube side, I apologize if you're still watching, Alvis. I'm hoping I'm not butchering your name, but he's from Venice, Italy, and he had a great time listening tonight to Phil's stories. So he chimed in on YouTube. So it's always nice to hear from our viewers that aren't in the Zoom room.
Yeah, he's from Venice, Italy, or he's in Venice?
Yes. Well, at least from.
Oh, from. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, tell him I'm going to be visiting him in October. I'd like a gondola ride if I could.
Definitely.
Okay.
It was nice talking to you, gentlemen. I think it's beautiful what you're doing to bring people some memory of what went on during the wars. There were different wars. The wars that you guys were in were just as important to you. And my heart goes out to any GI.
Well, Phil, that's our mission, is to keep the stories alive, to keep honoring our veterans, whether they served in a war or not, but particularly those who suffered for us, and the many, many, many who we can't interview because they didn't come home. And those are the ones we try to honor every time we have a veteran on. So thank you for your time, Phil. Thank you for...
And thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. And I was very, very impressed with you.
Thank you, Phil. That means a lot. That means a lot to us. And it's an honor to have you a part of the VBC family here. We hope to have you back on. You're welcome to join us anytime, you and Michael.
Let me just show you one thing. Over the 80 years that I'm gone, my uniform went. I had so many souvenirs. My son saw this at an auction and bought it for me.
Very nice.
And Phil, if you have the energy for it, we mentioned right before we started tonight that your late wife, was very organized and did wonders with your Army uniform. And I thought you might be able to tell us a bit about what she used to do.
My uniform. When my wife and I went into business, we were opening ladies' sportswear stores. And we had a very good friend that worked for us. And she's saying her son is writing a thesis on World War II. So my wife says, well, maybe I can get Phil's Eisenhower jacket with all his medals, awards, and his service stripes. He would like it. Said, like it, he would love it. So my wife figures, what the heck, I'm not going back to war. So she gives the woman my Eisenhower jacket. And the son loved it. I didn't have the heart to ask him back for it. So, but that was it. And that was it. And
That's it. Just sit back and relax.
And that's it. Here, you know what I think of many times, gentlemen? Next month, I'm going to be 102. I can't believe it. 102. You know, I reminisce and I dream of many, many times my various landings. And it brings back memories, some good, some not so good. I had in my company, I will not mention names, I had 3 of my brothers commit suicide at various times. Those, I think, were the,
Relax, take a break.
they were the saddest times.
Yes.
Can you imagine how a beautiful brother can get to a point to commit suicide?
Take a break.
That was the saddest part, I think, of my entire service. Gentlemen, thank you and good night. And I love you and respect you.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you
Phil.
for your stories. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you all for being here with us tonight. Michael, thank you for having us a part of this. Glenn, final words?
No, my pleasure, as always, to have the honor to interview Phil and the other World War II veterans we've been able to interview. We have another World War II veteran coming up in July. I believe it's July 10th.
Here, I'll give you one point. You asked if I came close to battle this. I think the closest I came, my top kick sent me and a brother out to do some surveying on the beachhead to relieve a friend of ours. I won't mention his name. He was a beautiful boy from Buffalo, New York. We went out and he was hit by a bomb. The Germans knew that they were finished, but they were dropping a few bombs just to let you know they're still around. And we found this friend of ours hit by fragments of a bomb on the beach. That was a terribly sad part of my life. Okay, guys, I wish you all good luck. I wish you all well. And let's memorize nicer things.
All
Bye-bye.
the best to you, Phil. Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Phil. Thank you, Glenn. We will talk with you all soon, next Monday night. And we will be at Christ United Methodist Church tomorrow morning. I'll be hosting in Todd's stead. So hope to see you all there. Thank you and have a good evening.